And I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, colleagues, today's UN General Assembly meeting is being held in conjunction with the latest use by the US of the veto in the UN Security Council in order to block calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Given that it has been more than 3 weeks since that day, I'd like to remind you how discussions went in the Council on the 22nd of December 2023. A few days before that, the UAE delegation, on behalf of the Arab states, presented a very robust draft resolution on expanding humanitarian assistance in Gaza. It contained, inter alia, an extremely important political point, a clear and unambiguous call for a cessation of hostilities in the Strip. This document, of course, was not to the liking of Washington, which conducted a very unscrupulous game in order to eviscerate it as much as possible and to ensure its main Middle Eastern ally had free reign in Gaza. Then came very underhand means of pressure and blackmail that our American colleagues slyly dubbed effective bilateral diplomacy. We saw this during negotiations on this draft in all its glory, and quite frankly speaking, it was a very ugly sight. After a few days of active arm twisting, the US managed to ensure that the initial premise of the draft was completely distorted. Instead of a call for a cessation of hostilities, wording appeared in the text reflecting the complete opposite, a call for creating conditions for the cessation of hostilities. So de facto, a license for Israel to kill civilian Palestinians in Gaza, using the excuse that cleansing the Strip is apparently what steps need to be taken in order to create these conditions. Guided by the absolute moral imperative to save civilian lives in Gaza, we could not allow the Council to sign off on a document tailored to America's needs, which would bless, so to speak, the ongoing extermination of the Gazans. Therefore, the Russian Federation presented an amendment which would have restored the wording from the initial UAE draft on the need for a cessation of hostilities supported by the Arab group. This amendment was supported by 10 council members. The UK, Japan, Switzerland and Albania abstained. This is also extremely telling, given their statements on their commitment to international humanitarian law and the protection of civilians. Only one delegation voted against, the US. Thus, Washington really revealed its true colours. It showed that the real aim of all this behind-the-scenes intrigue was not to hammer out a compromise text, as the American delegation hypocritically announced, but rather to push through the UN Security Council the ability to give free rein to the Israeli leadership, free rein to use any inhumane steps to clean up Gaza. As a result, discussions on Gaza in the Security Council in 2023 ended on a sad, if not tragic note. However, it's not the case that the Council was not able to carry out the mandate conferred upon it to maintain peace and security because of its institutional peculiarities. In December last year, the Council came closer than ever to consensus regarding calling on parties to have a ceasefire to ensure safe conditions for delivering needed humanitarian assistance to all in need in the oldest hotspot of the region. The real reason as to why it couldn't do it was one thing: the US's destructive policy. The US used every political diplomatic lever in its arsenal not to bring about peace, but rather to deliberately undermine multilateral efforts under the auspices of the UN to serve its own pernicious geopolitical interests in the Middle East. The sad result of this is that over the past 3 months of escalation in Gaza, the Council was only able to adopt the two resolutions Resolution 2712 and also the very dubious resolution I mentioned, 2720. It is very upsetting that no proper response was given to Antonio Guterres' letter to the Security Council under Article 99 of the UN Charter. Russia abstained on both documents and however, it did not vote against, solely based on requests of the Palestinian Arab representatives. But once again, I'd like to reiterate, we categorically do not agree with the contents of current OP2 of Resolution 2720, and we believe that responsibility for all possible ramifications should be borne by those states that gave their consent to its drafting that was pushed through by the US. There have been no glimmers of hope in the horrific humanitarian situation in Gaza. More than 22,000 Gazans have died, about 53,000 people have been injured, and a further 10,000 are missing under the rubble. Humanitarian achievement, so to speak, just boil down to the fact that according to the UNWFP, more than 500,000 people in the Strip are suffering from severe hunger, and children who fled to the south of Gaza are just getting 10% of their daily needs in water. 1 out of the 6 border crossing points, Kerem Shalom, was opened, and only 71 days after the start of the Israeli operation. The Secretary General and the heads of UN humanitarian specialized agencies time after time have stated that it's not possible to deliver assistance given the mass strikes and bombings, and the goods authorized are a drop in the ocean given the humanitarian suffering and needs, and also that civilian infrastructure, including medical facilities, have almost been totally destroyed. Given this, we believe that a clear call by the Security Council for a comprehensive ceasefire remains an imperative. Without it, as we have already seen from Resolution 2712, implementing the Council's decisions in Gaza is just not possible. On the 8th of December 2023, in his statement to the Security Council, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, clearly highlighted this. A similar conclusion can be drawn from his letter to the Council with the options for monitoring Resolution 2712. We believe, however much it's resisted because of its main Middle Eastern ally, the US's main Middle Eastern ally, the Council nonetheless will return to this issue and will clearly and unambiguously demand for a cessation of hostilities. Without this, all humanitarian efforts will be paralyzed. Distinguished President, colleagues, after the 7th of October attacks that we categorically condemned, the spiral of violence that the world is seeing every day has become truly catastrophic in scale. It's clear that it may well be repeated in the Middle East until the long-standing injustice, which is at the root cause of this conflict, is tackled, and until the Palestinian people enjoy the right provided for them in Security Council and General Assembly resolutions to establish their own independent state within the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Only such a balanced approach based on international law will bring lasting peace. In these circumstances, our shared goal is to help the parties start the negotiation process. All contentious issues need to be resolved within this. There's a need for collective diplomatic mechanism geared to creating conditions for implementing the decisions of the international community. One of the most pressing and urgent tasks is to restore Palestinian unity. For our part, even well before the start of the October escalation and confrontation in the Gaza Strip, in spring last year, we proposed holding ministerial consultations to consolidate positions of involved regional players in order to assist restoring the unity of the Palestinian people and organizations. This remains valid. Otherwise, against the backdrop of the paralysis of finding a solution to the Palestinian question, the world can only watch the Gaza Strip being wiped off the face of the earth. Gaza's population, who throughout their entire history have been deprived of any hope of having peaceful skies over their heads. Thank you very much.
Je remercie la distinguée représentante de la
I thank the distinguished representative